Day of the Girl. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your leadership, your insights. Thank you for having each other's back. Thank you for caring for the world that you want to create. The beauty of being a girl is that there's a lot of you.
This annual Girls Speak Out event is a wonderful occasion on the United Nations calendar.
Welcome to the annual Day of the Girls Speak Out.
Girls Speak Out.
The Girls Speak Out 2019.
Thanks for joining us at the Girls Speak Out 2020.
Welcome to the Girls Speak Out.
Are you ready to make a change?
In 2011, the United Nations declared October 11th the International Day of the Girl, or IDG. IDG is celebrated annually and serves as an opportunity to celebrate girlhood and to bring attention to the issues and concerns that girls face around the world. Since 2012, every year for International Day of the Girl, the Working Group on Girls, or the WGG, creates a space for girls to express ourselves, to engage with policymakers on the issues affecting us, and to give us a platform to amplify our voices, not just within our communities, but on a global level. We know that gender inequality begins before a girl is born, and it plays out in various ways throughout her childhood. Without the full and equal participation of girls' issues being addressed, girls' voices being heard, and girls' presence visible and consistent, we can't have a society which allows each person to develop and contribute fully. We acknowledge the efforts towards gender equality that have been made for many years, and that we are on the right path, but also that there is still a long way to go.
Remember, girls' rights are human rights, and have a happy International Day of the Girl.
I quote Maya Angelou. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to face new steps of change. Here, on the path of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out, and into your sister's eyes, and into your brother's face, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. 3 decades ago, on such a fine day as this, the first African-American and woman inaugural poet stood at a presidential inauguration ceremony to speak to a nation of change, the hope, need, and courage for it. We have come a long way since that morning and countless more when many others like her stood up to speak on behalf of those who couldn't. Today, we come together in the same spirit of change, hope, and courage to celebrate the 10th International Day of the Girl Child. A very warm welcome to all joining us today, in person and virtually. I wish every girl here a very happy International Day of the Girl Child. I'm Kashmi, a girl advocate working with the IDG UN NGO, and I'm joining you today from Lucknow, India. I'm joined by my co-moderators, Mackenzie and Dimitra, who will be present in person, and Alexia, who will moderate virtually together with me. Today, we are being co-hosted by the Working Group on Girls. The WGG is a coalition of over 40 national and international non-governmental organizations with representation in the United Nations that work with girls to support and advocate for their rights. I will now pass it over to Alexia to introduce and thank our sponsors and organizers for the event.
Thank you, Kashmi, for the heartwarming and inspirational opening of the event. My name is Alexia Nastasia. I'm a moderator of today's event on behalf of Girls Learn International, or GLI. And I'm a teen from the US who is currently living and learning in Senegal through the Kennedy Lugar Yes Abroad program of the US Department of State. In the words of the distinguished poet Maya Angelou, whom Kashmi mentioned, we need to offer space to place new steps of change for girls worldwide to be able to thrive. And this hybrid site in which we meet to discuss today all parts of the world constitutes such a space that can foster further change. Much has been done to support girls' empowerment since the first International Day of the Girl Child 10 years ago. Yet much still remains to be done. Thus, there is an urgency to pursue additional action for change, and our discussion today will hopefully lead to more action for change. I would like to take a few moments to extend a warm welcome to this International Days of the Girl event to the distinguished members of the UN community who make possible spaces for change to benefit girls worldwide. Let me also introduce and thank the co-sponsors of the event, the permanent missions of Canada, Peru, and Turkey to the United Nations. I would also like to present and thank the organizers of the event from the Working Group on Girls and UN Women who have worked hard alongside the girl speakers and moderators to make this event possible and who make ongoing efforts to manage spaces for change for girls. Let's now listen to all the welcoming remarks from our co-sponsors and allies. First, let's hear a special message from the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, a champion of gender equality in global settings.
The 10th anniversary of the International Day of the Girl Child, we celebrate the lives and achievements of girls across the world. When girls are supported to realize their human rights, they can reach their potential and create a better world for themselves, their communities and societies. When girls are educated, they are more likely to lead healthy, productive and fulfilling lives. When girls receive the right health care, they grow up with greater self-confidence and bodily autonomy. When girls understand their rights, including the right to live without the threat of violence, they are more likely to stay safe and report abuse. Many girls today face enormous challenges. They may have had their education handed by the COVID-19 pandemic. They may have been forced from their homes by conflict. They may be unable to exercise their sexual and reproductive rights. I'm extremely concerned by the continued exclusion of girls from school in Afghanistan. This is deeply damaging to girls themselves and to a country that desperately needs their energy and contributions. I once again urge the Taliban to let girls learn. Now, more than ever, we must renew our commitment to work together so that girls enjoy and exercise their rights and can play a full and equal part in their communities and societies. Investing in girls is investing in our common future. On the International Day of the Girl Child, let's redouble our efforts to make sure girls everywhere are healthy, educated, and safe.
Thank you to His Excellency Antonio Guterres for those words of solidarity. Let's now hear welcoming remarks from Ambassador Bob Ray, Permanent Representative of Canada to the UN.
Thank you very much, Today, I want to express my thanks to the organizers of this wonderful day and wonderful event for the chance to be with you and to say just a few words. Anyone here who knows me will know that saying a few words is not my specialty, but I will do my best to be as brief as I can. Canada, alongside Peru and Turkey, have been long-standing advocates of your efforts. We worked to create this day 10 years ago, and this is our 10th anniversary, and I'm really, really proud to have a chance to be with you. As I mentioned to the moderators, I'm not just speaking to you as an ambassador, I'm speaking to you as a father of 3 amazing young women, and of 6 grandchildren, 2 of whom are girls, and 4 of whom are boys. But in the course of my life, which is perhaps a little longer than some of yours, I've seen some remarkable changes. The last 70 years have really transformed the politics of the world, and in particular, no single social movement has been more important than the women's movement around the world. It has impacted each and every one of us, and it has made an enormous difference in the rights, in the freedoms, in the happiness, and in the futures of young women and girls. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't face challenges around the world, and we face challenges here at home. But it's also to celebrate the critical importance of including young girls and women in grassroots gender equality movements, because it's those movements that have made all the difference. And if I may say so, thinking of what is happening in Iran today, and also what is happening in Afghanistan and many other parts of the world, the cause of freedom is being led by women. The cause of equality is being led by women. And all of us have to recognize that and celebrate it for the wonderful thing that it is. In Canada, my home country, this month is also Women's History Month, which honors Canadian women and girls who, like you, refused to accept the status quo and fought hard to build a society that would be inclusive and gender equal. We need to keep on making investments in the future, and we need to make sure that the investments that we make in women and girls make a difference for all of you and for all of society. The way in which we've been able to empower women in many societies around the world, and my friend from Turkey will speak, and I can tell you what Turkey has done to advance the cause of equality between women and men has been remarkable and dramatic, and has impacted the entire region of the Middle East and of the rest of the world. We are seeing, tragically, we're seeing circumstances where women's equality rights are being threatened. I can't describe to you the number of places where this is taking place, except we all know that there are workplaces where women are not respected, that there are cultures where women are routinely harassed. There are cultures where women are not allowed to be themselves, not allowed to express themselves. Il y a des sociétés où l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes, malheureusement, n'existe pas. Et alors, ça veut dire, non qu'on devient découragé par la situation, que nous exprimons notre détermination de continuer de changer le monde. So, you can count on us in Canada to work hard on your behalf, to continue to fight. But above all, I want to just say one last word, or two words actually. Thank you. Thank you to all of you for showing your interest, your concern, and your determination by being here. And I know that with you in the leadership position where you deserve to be, you will in fact continue this battle, this fight, and this celebration of equality. Thank you so much.
I will now pass it over to my co-moderator, Dimitra, who is present in person in New York.
Thank you to our co-sponsors and allies for those welcoming remarks. My name is Dimitra, and I am a moderator for today's event on behalf of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese. We would like to take a moment now to acknowledge that the land administratively designated as New York City, where the headquarters of the United Nations are located, is the homeland of the Lenape, who have been systematically and violently displaced as a result of European settler colonialism and expansion over the past 400 years. We recognize the Lenape's close connection to and rightful stewardship of this land, and the Lenape girls who fight for their rights and the rights of their land. 10 years after the first celebration of the International Day of the Girl, we are still fighting for the rights of the girls around the world who cannot be here today. We do not have all 193 countries recognized by the UN represented by girls here today because of diverse factors such as lack of access to information, lack of access to the internet, oppressive governments, physical danger, and more. Today, we are not only celebrating girls' rights, voices, lives, and experiences, but also honoring and acknowledging girls for being brave and powerful when facing challenges in their daily lives. We honor all girl victims and survivors who face all forms of violence. We honor girls from various areas who can't join today's event because of lack of information and lack of access to quality technology and the internet. We honor Indigenous girls for their ongoing efforts in fighting for their rights, protecting the environment, and preserving their cultures. We honor girls in war zones who might be struggling to survive. All girls that are affected by climate change and natural disasters that see their rights and spaces be neglected. And all girls who can't join us today for various reasons. We acknowledge all girl advocates and activists that are still standing up and speaking out for girls' rights. The unknown girls who continue fighting for our rights. And all girls that join today's event with the will to change the world for girls. We see you. We also take this moment to honor our fellow girl advocate, Amanda Zulu, who was violently attacked and murdered just as we began preparations for the International Day of the Girl. Amanda was a girl activist representing the Grail from South Africa, who led discussions on climate justice during this year's Commission on the Status of Women. Amanda, we honor you. May her activism and advocacy continue to inspire us all and guide our efforts. We would like to now take a moment of silence in remembrance of all the girls who cannot be here today and of all the girls who we have lost to these issues, especially to gender-based violence. We also acknowledge all of you that took part of your time to listen to girls and the journey to achieve girls' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitra, for the acknowledgement of the bravery of girls worldwide. My name is Mackenzie. I will be one of the moderators for today's event on behalf of Girl Scouts USA. At today's Girls Speak Out, you will hear 3 segments of town hall discussion between girl advocates and UN representatives about access to education, survival and protection against violence, and girls as agents of change. Girl activists will share their experiences in candid discussion as we celebrate girl advocates' important work and reflect on the issues discussed in regards to such work. In order to commemorate the 10th anniversary of IDG, we will also look back at some memorable presentations from previous Girls Speak Out events. Today, we will highlight the framework established at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989 and outlining worldwide children's rights such as safety, privacy, and equality. We will also highlight the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action from 1995, in particular, Section L, which further outlines girls' right to non-discrimination. As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of International Day of the Girl, we will examine the equality of girls under the frameworks established by these documents and delve into the gaps that remain in the full realization of girls' rights. As you experience today's event, remember, the call of girls from all around the world is girls' rights now. Over to Alexia.
An event that is hybrid and in which some participants can engage in person in New York, whereas other participants like myself can engage virtually from around the world, provides an inclusive space for girls to learn, grow, and become empowered to act in local communities. United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child from 1989 established that all children have rights and should be treated fairly, no matter who they are, where they live, what language they speak, what their religion is, what they think, what they look like, if they're a boy or a girl, if they have a disability, or if they're original born. The Beijing Declaration and Call for Action from 1995, Section L, affirmed that all children, including girl children, have the right to live without discrimination based on their or their family's race, skin color, language, religion, national or ethnic identity, political or other opinion, property, ability, birth, or status. As Mackenzie mentioned, we must keep this framework and these guidelines in mind as we do today when we discuss the right and access of girls to education, the right of girls to survival and protection from violence, as well as the actions of girls as agents of change. We must also keep in mind the need to move even more firmly from declarations to action. We also have the extraordinary opportunity to be joined online today by graphic reporting artist Upsita Divedi, who will document today's discussion with a live illustration that you will see being shared by the end of the session. This live illustration will further be shared with all participants to keep the discussion going after the event. Ashri will take it from here to introduce the speakers in the first segment on girls' access to education.
Our first discussion of the afternoon will be about girls' access to education. Article 28 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child establishes that girls have the right to free education and the opportunity to go to school for as long as they want. Yet today, as tens of millions of girls remain out of school, we see this as not the case. Despite Section B of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action describing the myriad reasons girls are shut out of school, in 1995, such as inefficiencies in preventing child marriages and teen pregnancies, inadequate and gender-biased teaching and educational materials, sexual harassment, and lack of accessible support facilities, nearly 3 decades later, we are talking about the same issues in nearly the exact same way. The COVID-19 pandemic has further increased the problem. Let's first see a girl's submission from IDG 2014 about this issue.
2 days, Malawi.
I am 13 years old. I am a girl. Today, I would like to share what is bad and what is happening. Day number 1. It was just like I was walking through the streets of my village, and I felt this emotion over.
You girl, come here.
There, said,
Go buy me some ice.
I didn't know him, and I am a girl, so I did what he asked. Trying to, he grabbed my arm and pulled me into the house behind his booth. I couldn't do anything. I was frozen. When he was done, I told him that I would tell this to my mom. But then he said,
Go tell your mom.
there's nothing she can do. She's just a woman. So I ran home after I ran home before. But the only one I home was my grandmother. She said, I have to go to work now. I don't have time for this story. I decided to forget about it. Because if I didn't think about it, then I thought he had me. And if the village didn't know, then they couldn't stop me from going to school because I wasn't a virgin anymore. Day number 2. I was 11 years old, and it was summer. I just heard about Jack Ramanda, a preschool for orphans. So I went there together with my grandmother, and they asked me, the first people in my life to ever ask, what's your story? I felt bad. To the day 5 years ago, and I told them. They accepted me into the school, and I learned that it doesn't matter that I'm a girl, or Malawian, or what happens to me, that I can be proud to be a girl, and that I deserve to learn and succeed in school.
What we witnessed, as heartbreaking and appalling as it might be, is a sad reality we need to confront. We need accelerated change to address such tragic conditions. Today, we will hear from our girl activists about their experiences, what they have been doing to combat disparities, and what they need us to do to assist them in the task. Our first girl activist, Marka, is the founder and president of NTC Educate a Girl Inc., a non-profit that supports girls' education and access to sports in very urban and rural communities. Over to you, Marka.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening to the girls in Zimbabwe watching me right now. With my nonprofit, MTC Educate a Girl Foundation, access to education and economic opportunity is at the heart of our mission and vision.
Today, carry the voices of hundreds of girls from rural communities in Zimbabwe convene under the banner MTC and Beyond, demanding their internationally ratified right to access to education. To add to their ask, they're demanding an end to child marriages as it leads to a lifetime of suffering and lack of opportunities. More than 62 million girls are out of school right now, and millions more are fighting to stay in school. In rural Zimbabwe, where my organization operates, an extra hurdle is that families must be able to afford and be willing to pay tuition. This is in part because of the value placed on educating a girl versus a boy. During the COVID-19 school shutdowns, many girls lost their education due to the digital divide. COVID-19 and natural disasters such as Cyclone Idai made it even harder to track down and keep these girls in school and out of early child marriages for obvious reasons. Globally, 12 million girls a year are being raped under the guise of early child marriages, which is one girl every 3 seconds. The tragic cases of 12 to 14-year-olds like Memory Machaya dying from pregnancy complications is a nightmare to me and the people in my organization. Where MTC operates, it is home to the largest apostolic faith sect that condones polygamy and the marrying off of underage girls. We have followed and brought back many girls who pledged to be married. I am 17 myself and a student athlete. I cannot imagine myself out of school, let alone a mother to anyone. As a 10-year-old, I attended CSW in 59 as one of the youngest delegates. I was shocked to learn how many girls like me were being left behind and not playing sports or going to school around the world. And I was horrified to learn that some young girls like me were being married off to older men, and many more were dying in childbirth because their fragile bodies had not yet fully developed. I went home and promised to be a voice for these girls, especially those who lack the platforms to speak for themselves. This is when I became an activist. I vowed to fight harmful traditional, religious practices that kept girls behind. With my own money, I started buying soccer uniforms for girls to play soccer. Back then, soccer was a predominantly male sport in rural Zimbabwe. I worked hard with other partners using sports for social justice and as a vehicle for social change to fight child marriages and girls' exclusion from playing sports. In the USA, I started girls' clubs and raised awareness on the plight of other girls globally. Before COVID-19 shut us all down, we had a good number of girls who attended the CSW without pay yearly and even ran parallel sessions on girls' sports and girls' education. With the girls' soccer programs, girls' teams are now participating in the Day of the African Child soccer tournaments. MTC hosts the annual International Day of the Girl Child to celebrate ourselves as girls and put forward our demands. This is where we invite traditional, religious, and political leaders to be a part of the day's events to help us amplify our message of redefining girl spaces. The soccer initiatives reach thousands of girls weekly, and we provide psychosocial support, mental health support, as well as drug abuse awareness programs. Through the MTC and various stakeholder efforts, the Zimbabwe government passed a Marriages Amendment Bill in March 2020 that prohibited the marriage of underage girls. Climate change and natural disasters contribute to the number of orphans out of school, therefore increasing the number of vulnerable girls. As MTC, we have stepped in with educational scholarships to help with school retention. To date, MTC has constructed a 2-room library and stocked up on books, so we increase the access of educational and general literacy material at the community level. This library is the only free community library in the district, and many other rural districts in Zimbabwe. There is a lack of serious commitment by stakeholders as evidenced by the big number of girls out of school and getting married. Poor funding to grassroots organizations such as my own is an issue because we do not have a long history in the field. Yet, we young people are the leaders of today, and we demand to have control of our future. We need to share intergenerational leadership spaces that are well-capacited. We are tired of tokenization. Thank you for establishing the United Nations Youth Office. However, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. We are looking forward to the full implementation of Young People's resolutions and leveling off the playing field. Above everything, we need to accelerate girls' access to education and their retention in educational systems, while establishing safeguards and mechanisms of accountability. Today I'm asking policymakers to ensure commitment to the 1989 adopted United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children that world leaders made a historic commitment to. Yes, it is the most ratified human rights treaty, but it lacks full implementation. Access to education, protection from violence, and protection from sexual abuse are just some of the human rights agreed upon. But the violations of these same rights that girls are experiencing are extremely alarming. The question the girls asked me to pass to you today is, how do we ensure accountability to existing commitments? We need education, protection, and security.
Thank you very much, Martha, for your call to the full implementation of the 1989 United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child to benefit girls worldwide. Your activism in Zimbabwe is impactful, but as you mentioned, policy makers and leaders from local to global levels must take coordinated action now for girls' access to education, protection from violence, and protection from sexual abuse. Now, let's hear a message from Ms. Seema Bahous, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Director of UN Women, on the current state of girls' access to education and the dire need for accelerated growth in the area.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, greetings to you all, and the warmest of welcomes to all the young women and girl leaders from around the world. Today's Girls Speak Out Summit is an opportunity for you to share your expertise and perspectives on the fulfillment of girls' rights globally. This is also our opportunity to learn from a new generation of change makers. We have celebrated the International Day of the Girl for the past 10 years. It is a vital and vibrant celebration of the achievements and strengths of adolescent girls and a touch point for all our commitments to advance gender equality. However, at the same time, as I honor here the achievements of acknowledge the deeply challenging global context for progress. We continue to witness the harmful impact of discrimination based on gender and age, and we see the rollback of the rights of girls, whether in climate, education, physical and mental well-being, gender-based violence, or sexual and reproductive health and rights. Based on current rates of progress, UN Women estimates that women and girls will not achieve full equality with men and boys for another 300 years. This is shocking statistic, is a sharp spur for accelerated change. To break this trend, we need education that reaches every child and that truly equips students for the future, safely building girls' agency, equality, voice, and power in all their diversity. At the Global Transforming Education Summit that has just closed, 130 countries committed to reboot their education systems and accelerate action to end the learning crisis. We know that in 2021, 244 million children and young people were out of school. One of the factors keeping girls out of school is early forced marriage. To end this harmful practice by 2030, progress must be 17 times faster than in the last decade. We need every girl in school gaining the extra protection and strength that knowledge can bring her. We know that completion of secondary education can reduce a girl's risk of acquiring HIV by up to half. Currently, girls and women make up more than 50% of the 37.7 million people living with HIV. Girls deserve a world free from violence, harmful practices, and gender inequalities. You deserve a world where you have the power to fulfill your aspirations. I call upon all decision makers to take the urgent action required. Girls are calling for accountability from all of us in the fulfillment of their rights. I join your call and commit UN Women's full support to this call. This is your time, your rights, your future. Thank you.
to respond to the call for girls' access to education and accountability for girls' rights.
Thank you. Dear girls, this is the most enjoyable meeting that I attend in the United Nations. I warmly welcome you all to the United Nations. Happy International Day of the Girl Child. Together with Canada and Peru, Turkey is proud to mark the 10th anniversary of this event. The name of the event, Girls Speak Out, resonates with what we wish and need to achieve to enable the participation of girls as true stakeholders in all our discussions in life. I thank each and every one of you for joining us today in person and virtually. Dear Maka, we have listened carefully to you and heard the voices of hundreds of girls from Zimbabwe. We demand what is rightfully yours. You ask for stronger commitments and braver actions. More than 30 years ago, the Convention on the Rights of the Child recognized the non-negotiable rights of the children. With this one of the most visionary and universally accepted human rights agreement in history, governments have pledged to respect, protect, and promote the rights of all children everywhere to be free from discrimination, violence, and neglect. It would not be fair to ignore the progress achieved since then, nor would it be helpful to remain pessimistic for the future. As you have demonstrated us with your life story, motivation and determination around the right issues can go a long way. It can raise awareness, mobilize resources, and at the end, help make the world a better place for all the girls. And as Bob put, we the baby boomers have seen throughout our life what has been achieved so far, but this is not enough. I am proud to see that at a very young age, you have realized what many others still turn a blind eye to. That is a girl's education that changes everything. An educated girl is more likely to grow up healthy, safe, and empowered to determine the course of her life and future. At this point, I would like to underline an issue that is very dear to me. That is the girls' education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. Global challenges such as climate change and COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the world's transition to an increasingly digital economy, require a robust STEM workforce. STEM occupations are projected to increase twice as fast as all other jobs in the next 10 years. So this is where the future lies. This is where girls can and should try to make a difference. Dear Maka, as you conveyed from your first-hand experience, sport has a huge potential to empower girls. It amplifies girls' voices and tears down gender stereotypes. Girls in sport demonstrate not only physical strength, but also leadership and strategic thinking. If we are sincere in our efforts to raise a generation that will be the successful, courageous, and confident woman of the future, our goal should be to equip every girl with the courage and skills to exercise the power of her voice. As opportunities for girls increase around the world, we will hear more encouraging stories which will constitute a source of pride for all of you. Thank you once again for your energy and brilliance.
Thank you, Mr. Sneedham, for your response and recommendations. I will now pass it over to Alexia to take us to the next step.
Thank you, Maka, for all your important advocacy work in Zimbabwe, and a big thank you to Ms. Simabaos from UN Women, as well as Mr. Berenice Meroglu, the permanent representative of Turkey to the UN, for the responses in regards to UN action in the area of providing access to education. Mackenzie will now introduce the segment on the right to protection from violence and right to survival.
Thank you, Alexia. Welcome to our second discussion of the afternoon, covering girls' right to protection from violence and survival. Article 6 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child states that every child has the right to be alive, survive, and develop in the best possible way. Any look at the statistics shows that this is not the case. Section L of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action affirms that in some areas of the world, men outnumber women by 5 in every 100. The reasons for this discrepancy include, among other things, harmful attitudes and practices such as violence against women, sexual exploitation, and sexual abuse. As a result, fewer girls than boys survive into adulthood. While progress has been made since the Beijing Platform was released, substantial progress has not been made towards ensuring that girls have opportunities to develop in the best possible way. 1/3 of women worldwide will experience physical or sexual abuse in their lifetime. Of those who have been in a relationship, almost 1 in 4 adolescent girls aged 15 to 19 have experienced physical or sexual violence. Globally, 81,000 women and girls were killed in 2020. Over half of them died at the hands of an intimate partner or family member, which equals to a woman or girl being killed every 11 minutes in her own home. As Graça Machel said, there are precious lives between these cold numbers. Yet this predicament affecting so many across the globe and intensifying by the minute is set in harrowing silence. We will hear today from our girl activists about their fight for these precious lives and their right to survival and protection against violence. For a topic that has continuously been stressed since the inception of International Day of the Girl, far too little progress has been made, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, violence against women has even increased in the past few years. As our speakers today will show, it is of utmost importance that steps are taken now in order to save girls' lives. First, let's take a look back at what activist Isabella said at the 2019 Speak Out.
The creation story of the Kauai Indians, their girl, Menyo, the Moon Maiden. Menyo was once a mortal who lived among the people and taught them how to live. One night, Mukat, the creator, forced her into a sleep so deep that she could not cry out or struggle against him. For his wickedness, Mukat was banished and Menyo was silent. The people begged Menyo to speak until finally she sang them a song and they at once understood her. I wonder what it was that Menyo sang to the people that made them come to know her so clearly. It was Menyo who gave the people the arts, the invaluable gift of storytelling. Stories shape identity. They can call up a great amount of strength in a people, but they can also be the unwitting tools of oppression. My grandfather did not want to be Indian. He passed on to my mother the message ingrained in his psyche throughout boarding school. He told her, the further away you are from being Indian, the closer you are to God. No one is going to tell the story of a young Kauai girl for her. She must do it herself. I like to think that it was Menyo who inspired me to write the play, Menyo and Her Heart. But I know who this play is really written for. It is for Jessica May Orozco, Jojo Boswell, Aisha Nightpipe, Savannah LaFontaine Graywind, faceless names of the missing and murdered. It is for my little cousin Maya and my sister, Sophia. It is for all the women and girls who stand and fight beside me, performance after performance, to share the forgotten stories of their stolen sisters, to end the silence. Menyo and Her Heart tells the story of a young indigenous girl who is not taken, but instead must make the choice of whether or not she will continue the fight. A fight that right now, she largely has to brave alone. In the United States, 84% of Native women will experience violence in their lifetimes. They go missing and are murdered at rates 10 times higher than the national average. Despite this,
95% of these cases go undocumented by national news media. Legislation has failed because it does not exist. It is time to tell the stories that are being told. Manual in Your Heart was my way to bring this truth forward.
Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls continue to need greater attention and support from global policymakers, as frequently girls and their families do not see justice for assault or murder, and there are rarely meaningful attempts to prevent such violence. Our first speaker, Samantha, is from Nigeria and is working to end the rising gender-based violence and especially sexual violence that girls in her region face. Today, she will be speaking about her work helping girls out of abusive situations. Samantha, please take it away.
Samantha, thank you for this great opportunity to talk to you about what I am so passionate about. I'm very worried for the girls in my community, for the rising cases of sexual molestation and abuse of the rights of girls. The COVID-19 pandemic, terrorism, and banditry have made the figures soar higher. UNICEF reported that 1 out of every 4 girls in Nigeria have been sexually abused. We continue to hear about the rising cases of rape, child marriage, trafficking, and even more worrying, the commercialization of sexual molestation, where girls are raped so that they can produce babies in places called baby factories. Girls are not just molested. They have been shamed into a culture of silence. So while the girl suffers physical and psychological trauma, the molester reigns free. In my local community, together with other girls from the Globe Club, we have started a project called Whisper a Coco that encourages girls to open up to their trusted allies and also alert girls in their circles so they don't also fall prey. Girls are really beginning to speak up because they have come to realize that the "I will harm you if you tell anyone" threat becomes powerless when they speak up. Even the girls in my community are now doing their part by speaking out and naming their molesters. They hardly get the justice they deserve. Also, we do not have safe havens where girls can go to and receive physical and psychological care without stigma. With less access to education and being engaged in underpaid or unpaid labor, girls are poorer. Poverty makes girls even more prone to sexual violence, early marriage, and trafficking. Economic empowerment for girls solves a lot of problems for girls. Financially independent girls do better with decision making and are less vulnerable to being preyed upon by sexual abusers. Is 1 in 4 girls not enough to get us more than worried and take action, or do we have to wait for the other 3 to be molested and abused? I call on the United Nations to provide safe havens, spaces where girls can feel safe physically and emotionally safe. These safe havens should provide medical services and psychosocial support and legal services for victims of sexual violence. Also, for effectiveness and sustainability, the safe havens should be placed under stringent monitoring and evaluation, because these systems hardly work in my country due to corruption and other factors. I call on members of my community to end the stigma. The molested girl is a victim and should not be shamed for speaking out. I call on world leaders to invest in girls, invest in the education for girls, invest in economic empowerment for girls. I call on the United Nations to take this beyond the conversation and begin to implement policies that seek to enforce girls' rights to live free from violence and the right to dignity. I am Samantha. I speak up for girls' rights. Thank you.
for your powerful speech and for your call to the UN to create safe havens with medical and psychological support for girl victims of sexual violence, as well as more programs to advance girls' economic empowerment. Our second speaker, Hereti, is an activist whose advocacy is centered around climate justice and environmental activism, especially in the Pacific region, as well as the preservation of Indigenous culture and protection of Indigenous rights. Today, she will be speaking about her experience as a girl from the Cook Islands and the voice she has raised to implement the changes needed in society. Hereti, please take it away.
I am white. I am white. Etimata, etimata. I will not surrender. I will not be defeated. Charanata kato tali de ramana. Kohei to kulma, maya. My name is Hereti and I'm from the island of Alakoa. Firstly, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak here today. And I would also like to extend my gratitude and respect to the Malawi tribe as the caretakers of this space. This is a traditional chant appeared by the women of Ngati Tsu Ope Ope, Ngati Nia, and Ngati Apai Marunga of Arigumo, Rakitu, on the island of Aragon. My home. These women fought against the men of another tribe who chose to raid their village when their men had gone inland to seek food. These women were alone with their children. The enemy tribe chose that moment to attack their village, expecting an easy victory. They did not expect the women to fight back. The women did. They fought back with all the weapons in their reach, everything at their disposal. The enemy was beaten back on the head and shoulders and forever teased by our women and the women of their own tribes. These women were my ancestors. This day is a rallying call for all our women to stick together, to never give up or give in to the forces and challenges, even when they are much stronger and more numerous than us. In the end, our perseverance and courage alone will allow us to make changes we never thought possible. Today, I'm here to speak about Indigenous rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1, states that all humans are born free and equal with dignity and rights. This is a right that each and every one of us is born with, but to assume that these rights are recognized within all countries, communities, and groups would be ignorant. Throughout the world, Indigenous communities have faced many atrocities. Our history is marred by invasion and genocide, our land taken from us, our language and our culture stamped out, while our artifacts, our treasured artifacts, are displayed in museums around the world for everyone's amusement. Although all these events took place many years before you and I were even born, the ripple effect is still being felt today as Indigenous communities around the globe struggle to hold on to our language and our cultures. According to the Language Conservancy, there are currently 577 critically endangered Indigenous languages. A disproportionate number of people living below the poverty line are Indigenous, in particular, Indigenous women, with very limited access to healthcare, education, employment, and basic necessities. Indigenous people continue to fight to be heard and to be part of decision-making processes and to have Indigenous representation in leadership. This is often not met and is often ignored. The Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights was ratified in 2007. 13 years have now passed. 15 years have now passed. And Indigenous people's rights are still not recognized and are still disrespected and violated in many countries. According to the OHCHR, attacks on those who defend Indigenous rights have risen, and the protection and promotion of these rights continue to be resisted. As a result, we continue to see the displacement and dispossession of Indigenous peoples. Although all Indigenous communities have many things in common, including but not limited to the subjugation we have all faced, we are all unique and have our own problems that are deserving of equal attention and respect. Trying to consolidate us into one being with only a select few voices being heard is a problem in itself. That being said, I cannot speak for all Indigenous people on Indigenous rights and issues. I can only speak for myself and my experiences as a girl from local islands. My experience in the Pacific, and even in my own country, is completely different from the experiences others face all over the world. The history and experiences of my people are different from the experiences of Indigenous people in the Americas, even vastly different from my neighbours in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and in Australia. From my own experience, I can speak about generational trauma and violence, the loss of language, history, the traditional knowledge and culture we've endured as a result of colonization. My ancestors were forced to whisper and hide their stories to pass on to us descendants in fear that the missionaries may find out that they would lose their spot in the eternal kingdom of heaven. They lived in fear of this all the time. I can also speak about all the things that we have lost from having to adapt our country and society into what better fits a Western view of proper civilization. My grandparents' generation were forced to speak English, and if they were caught speaking their native language Māori in their home or even at school, they were met with fear. Their parents believed strongly that for their children to succeed, they had to be born like the papaha, the white men. They had to dress like them, act like them, and speak like them. As a result, many of my parents' generation and my own generation never learned to speak out. When I reflect on all of this, as compared to Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights, I know that there's still much work to be done to make that statement true. Today, as we try to retain our language and our culture, we are now facing a new threat. In the Pacific, we are endangered by the climate crisis, the most recent form of violence against us. The loss of our homeland is quite literal and evident. We are the ones who are being displaced by rising sea levels and increased natural disasters. But not just in the Pacific, where our islands are shrinking, but everywhere around the world, Indigenous communities are disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. A problem we had very little hand in creating, but are now suffering the consequences of before everyone else. As we face this threat, we are encouraged by efforts that are made to combat the effects of climate change, such as the KIWA Kilo Initiative and their project that aims to strengthen the climate resilience of Pacific Island ecosystems, communities, and economies through nature-based solutions by protecting, sustainably managing, and restoring biodiversity, or SPREPS Pacific Adaptation to Climate Change Program, which focuses on coastal zone management, food security and production, and water and resource management. But there is still so much more to be done when we face losing our homes too. At the end of the day, the thing that matters the most is taking action and improving the situation before even more is lost. World leaders need to step up, governments need to step up, and we all need to work together in whatever ways we can to reduce the effects of the climate crisis, prevent further damage, and eventually heal our environment. Although we may not all be responsible for the events that have led to the climate crisis, though we may not all be feeling the effects of it right now, it is all of our responsibility and duty to change things for the better and help where we can. Kia ora, e kia ora, thank you.
Thank you, Pereti, for your inspiring words and call to have more comprehensive and collective climate disaster relief efforts for Indigenous communities in the Pacific. Now, we invite Mr. David Pedrosa, representative from the Permanent Mission of Peru to the UN, to respond to Samantha's call for the implementation and accountability of policies to protect girls from gender-based violence and the investment into girls' economic empowerment programs, and Pereti's call for more comprehensive and collective relief efforts in areas where girls and Indigenous lives are impacted by the climate crisis.
Thank you very much. I will do the statement in Spanish. So, please. Muchas gracias. Estoy muy feliz de estar con todos ustedes. I can wait, so you can do that. Okay. Estoy muy feliz de estar con ustedes y me siento muy honrado de poder participar en este importante evento. Muchas gracias al Working Group on Girls, así como a las misiones permanentes de Turquía y de Canadá. En nombre de mi país, quiero desearle a todas ustedes un feliz Día Internacional de la Niña. Hoy celebramos el 10º aniversario de que las Naciones Unidas decidió establecer este día para reconocer los derechos de las niñas y visibilizar los desafíos que ellas enfrentan en todo el mundo, que hemos escuchado los testimonios. Cada día, todas las niñas del mundo enfrentan estereotipos y barreras que limitan el ejercicio de sus derechos, pero ellas, en diversas instancias, se están organizando para enfrentar la violencia y la desigualdad, en particular la falta de acceso a la educación, los efectos del cambio climático, los conflictos, el matrimonio infantil, entre otros problemas que las afectan directamente a ellas. Por eso las felicito. En las últimas décadas hemos avanzado mucho para empoderar a las niñas. Ya no es aceptable que alguna de ustedes tenga que renunciar a sus sueños o que se les haga creer que no tienen posibilidad de alcanzarlos. No obstante, aún persisten muchas barreras que limitan que ustedes puedan gozar sus derechos sin miedos y sin trabas. Por eso, quiero referirme a los testimonios que acabamos de escuchar de Samantha y de Lili. Respecto de Samantha, lamentablemente los niveles de violencia en todas sus formas siguen siendo más o menos los mismos. La violencia de género afecta a 1 de cada 3 mujeres. Repito, 1 de cada 3. Esta cifra es una vergüenza para todos y tenemos que cambiarla. Es necesario, como dijo Samantha, contar con espacios seguros para que las niñas víctimas puedan recibir cuidados físicos y psicológicos sin riesgo de ser estigmatizadas. Es importante también que mejoremos el acceso que caemos con impunidad. No es posible que un perpetrador de violencia contra ellas pueda andar libre, mientras que su víctima, la niña, tenga que sufrir los efectos del trauma y el estigma en sus sociedades. Tal como lo dijo Samantha, debemos invertir en la educación de las niñas y en invertir en su desarrollo económico. Esto es indispensable si queremos acabar con la violencia persistente. De igual forma, felicito a Irene por la historia y empoderamiento de las mujeres que nos contó y nos contó mucho, así como su testimonio respecto a las experiencias de los pueblos indígenas y la amenaza latente y permanente del cambio climático. Las niñas que pertenecen a pueblos indígenas son especialmente vulnerables a la violencia y a la discriminación debido a su género y a su etnicidad. El cambio climático, lamentablemente, es un factor que acelera e intensifica esta violencia. Debemos adoptar medidas para prevenir todos los tipos de violencia que afectan a nuestras niñas y debemos promover el uso de sus lenguas originales. Todo ello debemos hacerlo desde una perspectiva que reconozca los derechos individuales y colectivos, la igualdad de género, respete la diversidad cultural y étnica de ellas, así como sus diferentes cosmovisiones y formas de entender el mundo. Mi país, el Perú, reafirma todos sus compromisos adquiridos para proteger y promover los derechos de todas las niñas, eliminar todas las formas de violencia, desde una perspectiva que considere los derechos humanos y la igualdad de género y con el fin último de cumplir con los objetivos de la Agenda 2030. Quiero terminar refiriéndome a la responsabilidad compartida que tenemos todos de asegurar las condiciones necesarias para que ustedes, las niñas, puedan desarrollarse sin barreras. Este trabajo debe ser efectivo y tangible. Debemos hacer todo lo que podemos y todo lo que no hemos descubierto para asegurar el futuro de cada uno de ustedes. Si somos capaces de lograr que cada una de las niñas, en cualquier lugar del mundo, cumpla sus sueños, estaremos en el camino correcto para asegurar el futuro de todos nosotros. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much to our girl activists, Samantha and Hereti, and to Mr. Pedrosa from the Permanent Mission of Peru to the UN for the powerful stories and recommendations related to taking action against gender-based violence and environmental crises negatively impacting the lives of girls. Now, I will pass it back to Alexia to lead us into the next segment.
It has been powerful to hear Samantha's call for an end to the culture of silence that hides girls' molestation and to the culture of shame that leads to the blaming of molested girls who are in much need of many forms of support. It has also been inspirational to hear from Haiti about the involvement of girls in efforts to preserve indigenous cultures and to minimize the impact of various types of disasters on indigenous communities. Dimitra will now introduce the segment on girls as agents of change.
Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child states that a child has the right to express views freely in all matters relating to the child's views being given due weight. This is a right that girls have not always been afforded. Girls have historically not had access to decision-making spaces, nor have they been given the opportunity to affect change in their communities. Girls have not been consulted on issues that concern them, and have not been considered leaders or change makers. Section L of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action states, girls are less encouraged than boys to participate in and learn about the social, economic, and political functioning of society, with the result that they are not offered the same opportunities as boys to take part in decision-making processes. This is a vital right of which girls have often been deprived. Yet girls offer a unique perspective and deserve the ability to make change that will help both them and their communities. Over the past 10 years, girls at the International Day of the Girl have been fighting for their right to decision-making spaces and their acknowledgement as agents of change. 6 years ago, at the 2016 Girls Speak Out, girl activist Hariella spoke on this issue.
Girls today need more women leaders representing us not only in politics but in all professions that are not often associated with girls and young women. As girls, I want you to know that you should not limit yourself to only speaking to send a message. But you can also use other talents, for example, poetry and singing, to get our message across. If we educate every girl in any possible way, we will become our very own advocates. I am a girl, and I am a leader, and I am not alone. There are 4 billion girls in this world with you and me, and I am one of them, and so are you. We can and we should do more, especially for those who cannot or do not have their voices heard. We need to show them a future where the rights of girls are not limited and the image of women as leaders in politics becomes the norm. I believe in that future, and I know I am not alone. I believe in girls and women will lead the 21st century.
It has been 6 years, and we still have not reached Hariella's goal of women in decision-making spaces being the norm. Our girl advocates today will be discussing their role and experience as agents of change in their communities and their efforts to reach this goal. Our first speaker is Vivian, an activist who advocates to help her peers in her hometown of Guayaquil, Ecuador, by creating safe spaces. As a part of this work, she manages a page where she posts information that girls in her community might be facing, especially relating to gender-based violence. Today, she will be speaking about her experience as an agent of change in her community. Vivian.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Es maravilloso poder hacer que mi voz se escuche aquí el día de hoy. Yo empecé mi incidencia con mi participación dentro del Club de Niñas durante un tiempo difícil de pandemia. Pasamos por la sensibilización y miramos de frente nuestra realidad, que fue muy duro. Luego vino la formación y con el conocimiento entendimos lo importante que es saber sobre derechos, liderazgo y el desarrollo personal de las niñas. Después, iniciamos con la incidencia, trabajando en círculos con las pequeñas, dando charlas, haciendo foros, realizando visitas a las aulas de escuela y colegio, para escuchar, acoger y recibir el eco de las voces que hoy represento. Yo quisiera hablarles de 3 cosas muy importantes. Primero, quiero contarles cuál es nuestra realidad. Después, identificar nuestros problemas y cómo nos sensibilizamos frente a estos. Finalmente, quiero proponer iniciativas que creo que pueden llegarnos a un cambio efectivo en nuestra sociedad. Soy niña y soy ecuatoriana. Hemos salido recientemente de un tiempo de pandemia que nos marcó de muchas formas, revelando realidades muy duras de violencia y maltrato dentro de cada familia. niña. Y qué difícil ver que la persona que se supone que debe amarte, respetarte y cuidarte esté atentando contra tu vida diariamente. Esta violencia y maltrato también es parte de nuestra sociedad. Nos atacan en las calles, en los buses, en los parques, nos agreden, violan y matan, inclusive sin que nuestra voz sea escuchada. Nos aplican acciones preventivas y correctivas, eficaces y a tiempo. Amo a mi patria y por eso lamento tener que describir este escenario en el cual nuestros derechos son vulnerados. Y lo que más me duele es la indolencia de que prefiere mirar a otro lado, incluso grabarnos, pero no ayudarnos. Desde mi meta de vida, ser psicóloga, especializándome en psicología social, podría buscar la manera en la cual podamos llegar a concientizar y dejar de hacer de menos estas situaciones. ¿Qué hace falta en este contexto? En primer lugar, esto, precisamente lo que hacemos hoy, decirlo, exponerlo y hablarlo. Alentar a las demás a hacerlo, a entender que hay cosas que no pueden morir en el silencio, y que hay voces que no pueden ni deben ser silenciadas. En segundo lugar, es el clamor constante de todas nosotras, el insistir en la educación, en la formación, en la capacitación de temas fundamentales como los derechos, acceso a recursos, liderazgos y por último, es imperioso trabajar en el empoderamiento de la niña para que se ejerza su oportunidad de tomar decisiones en todos los niveles que conduzcan soluciones específicas para las niñas, haciendo visibles la opresión, el abuso, el silencio cómplice, la revictimización que se encuentra en todas partes. En Ecuador existen leyes, pero son letras muertas. Es por eso que se debe garantizar y reforzar las leyes en defensa de las niñas. Sería muy bueno motivar a las niñas a denunciar y a salir de situaciones de violencia de manera inmediata. Trabajemos juntas como una sola persona, elevando nuestra voz, con nuevas propuestas para mejorar la calidad de vida dentro de nuestra comunidad. Propuestas que promuevan la inclusión. Propongo propuestas innovadoras, propuestas que realmente destaquen y nos hagan analizar nuestra manera de pensar. Me gustaría preguntarle a todos, ¿cuál es tu nombre? ¿Qué te emociona y hace latir tu corazón? Cuéntame tu historia. Quiero escuchar tu voz y tu convicción. Porque hay mucho por decir y por hacer. Por eso quisiera solicitar a la ONU Mujeres y la UNICEF, que ofrezcan un espacio mundial donde muchas niñas y jóvenes puedan desde su realidad levantar su voz y formarse para ayudar a otras a cambiar la realidad de sus familias, de la sociedad y del mundo. Tenemos la oportunidad de convertirnos en niñas defensoras y activistas capaces de estremecer los cimientos de una cultura de violencia, para no solamente decir no con nuestra voz, sino con nuestras obras. No más, nunca más. Gracias.
Thank you, Vivian, for your powerful call to give girls and young people the space to speak their minds and help themselves and their communities. These are necessary rights that girls have historically and to their detriment been denied. It is only through allowing girls to speak for themselves in communities such as Vivian's that girls are able to realize the full extent of their abilities and make change that will help both themselves and the world. Our second speaker is Anne Maria, an activist passionate about the intersection of gender-based violence and female health. She has channeled this passion into advocacy that seeks to improve medicine in rural areas, especially for victims of domestic violence. She is speaking today about her experience as an advocate for girls' action in decision-making spaces. Anne Maria?
Good afternoon. My name is Anne Maria, and I am here on behalf of Girl Scouts USA, an organization I've been a part of for 13 years. I am honored and excited to speak with you today. Girl Scouts taught me how to work with other people, how to solve problems, and most importantly, how to be a leader. To earn a Gold Award, which is the highest award a Girl Scout can earn, one must develop a sustainable project that will leave a lasting impact on a specific community. When I began working on my Gold Award, I decided to focus on medical marginalization and access to healthcare in rural communities. For my project, I led a team of volunteers in designing and programming ScoutBlood, a software platform that matches rural hospitals with pre-registered blood donors. Today, ScoutBlood has been adopted by 24 hospitals and has amassed a 11,000 individual donors in rural India. My work with Scout Club revolves around healthcare disparities in the poorest and most rural regions of our world. But these same disparities are exacerbated within the most vulnerable populations, namely girls and women. According to the United Nations, 81,000 girls and women were killed in 2020, and 58% of these deaths were at the hands of abusive partners or family members. Globally, the effects of domestic violence against girls are most prevalent in low and middle income countries. In healthcare specifically, girls and women are most at risk for feeling ignored or dismissed by a doctor due to gender. Victims of gender-based violence are statistically at greater risk of not receiving life-saving care. These realities for rural girls and women troubled me deeply. So I started Allies Against Abuse, a nonprofit dedicated to serving victims of domestic violence. The nonprofit first began by providing supplies to women's shelters in California that were devastated by the pandemic and struggling to support the influx of women and their children. Around this time, a family friend from Uganda told me about a similar situation in his hometown. Village girls and women were experiencing higher abuse rates and could not receive medical treatment. The closest hospitals were filled with COVID-19 patients and did not have the resources or the infrastructure to prioritize or support abuse victims. That's when we at Allies Against Abuse took on the Uganda Project, an initiative centered around the intersection of rural healthcare and domestic violence in Namengo, Uganda. We began by speaking to the women of Namengo and listening to their specific needs. After countless interviews with the local women, we identified the root of the problem. Girls and women are often told that their pain is psychosomatic, or just in their head. This tactic allows health centers to dismiss their cases and prioritize male patients, leaving girls and women in the community ignored, deprioritized, and mistreated. So Allies Against Abuse partnered with the women of Namengo to design, develop, and implement the construction of a hospital for local girls and women. For 3 years, we held charity events, applied for corporate grants, and conducted fundraisers. After raising over $30,000, Allies Against Abuse collaborated with the District Council and the women of Namengo to design and build St. Sebastian's Women's and Children's Hospital. This hospital accommodates up to 100 patients and is the first in its village to offer healthcare and resources prioritizing local girls and women. Additionally, Allies Against Abuse fully covers treatment expenses for any widow or victim of gender-based violence. My work has largely been inspired by my grandmother and the women in my family back in India who I know have struggled with obtaining basic health care. Today, millions of girls and women around the world cannot access essential, life-saving care due to barriers like transportation, expenses, and oppressive households. Just like any one of us, they too have a right to life. And we must fight for this right until it can be achieved, regardless of the presence of a man. Today, St. Sebastian's Hospital serves the 15,000 women of Namengo and the greater Budaka district. Moving forward, Allies Against Abuse is focusing its efforts on constructing the first ever operation room in Namengo. When we visited Uganda 2 months ago for the ribbon cutting ceremony, we could see firsthand the impact this hospital has had on the village we built it in. But just during my time in Uganda, I noticed a myriad of other pressing concerns. Limited access to female education, financial dependence on male heads, and societal stigma that forces girls and women into unconditional subservience. These issues are not separate and distinct problems that plague our world, but rather interconnected spikes of the same obstacle we must destroy together. When I was in Uganda, I realized that most of us will never know the suffering of these women. But today, we must try and understand. And understanding begins with listening to the voices, stories, and struggles of girls and women from around the world. To our esteemed policymakers, diplomats, and delegates in the audience, the question I want to pose today is this. We talk about many ideal outcomes, such as changing society's stigma around girls and women becoming financially independent. As real as these goals are, it will take generations to change how some communities treat their girls and women. Within a more immediate time frame, what is a material solution that will allow rural girls and women access to the healthcare, support, and resources necessary to find safety and independence from their abusers? Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Maria, for your important call for access to healthcare resources and medical treatment when needed for women and girls in rural areas. It is through work like yours that girls find the safety and opportunity necessary to claim their rightful titles as leaders and agents of change. Now, we will hear from the UNICEF Deputy Executive Director of Partnerships, Karen Holshoff, to respond to Anne Maria and Vivian's calls to create safe spaces globally where women and girls can speak their minds, learn from one another, and increase availability for medical resources. Ms. Holshoff.
Yes, it is a real, I would say, a moving moment. We've heard so many stories about abuse and violence and also impossibility. I like to think also about possibilities, but first of all, it is sobering and chilling. I'm not of the same age as you are. I'm a few generations older. So many things have changed, but also so many things have stayed the same. So that is for me a reality that we are facing all together, girls, women, wherever we are. We have probably more access to education, not all of us, but many of us. We can go to college if we have the opportunity, sometimes financially or some depending on the country where we live. But still, when it comes to domestic violence, abuse, it is something I don't think so much has changed. And that is truly chilling. So we heard from Vivian from Guayaquil that during the pandemic it was extremely hard to be home, to be in a small community with the school closures. She was just had the desire to go back to school and to probably then she was also inspired to think of small and bigger initiatives that people can do so that they join up when they're faced with domestic violence, abuse. And the three things that she mentioned really stuck with me. So the first thing she said is speak out. But that really, I think over the generations and over decades hasn't changed. That speaking out has to be a conviction from deep down within. To have that strength to collect your thoughts instead of racing your thoughts, collect your thoughts, speak to someone you trust. It's not so easy. She did that and she did that here on camera, so I really admire that. She also, second point she said was insistent education. We know that if we go to school, particularly girls, women, if we go to school, every year of instruction is a year of additional empowerment, of developing your own agency of independence. We also know that every year of instruction brings us closer to the number of children that you would like to have. So in a way, comprehensive sexuality education and other things that are at school are part of that deeper, I would say, foundation that we have, that we need and we want to speak out. And third, she said, invest in children. And that is also not enough, and I don't think that has changed enough. We are all, in a way, most of us probably will be climate activists. But if we think about climate, where are girls, where are young people? We talk about carbon emissions and reducing it, but we also need to talk about the human being in this adaptation to a new world where there is an increase in temperature. So we have to stick together and work together to change the status quo, and we can only do that when we are together. Anne-Marie, when you spoke as on behalf of the Girl Scouts of USA, you were explaining to us about the the gold award that you do in order to get a sustainable project going. I understood you did two, one for your gold award and then one later on for Uganda. The big thing, and I'm doing this work quite a long time, it is very hard for people to listen. We like to be talking and we like to be heard, but to listen profoundly is bringing us closer to a solution and is bringing us closer also in our own strength. So it is very hard. And I like to introduce myself also. You did that, I will do. I'm Karen, and I also speak up for girls' rights and empowerment. I've done that my whole life. And I have passed that on to my daughter. She's now 33, so not so young anymore. She just became a mother herself. And what I try to instill in her is that you trust your own intuition and that you seek and reach out to others when you see they may need it, but also when you need it. Sometimes it's easier to help, and sometimes it's more difficult that you go through a difficult time, that you reach out yourself. So when yesterday we had a big meeting in UNICEF, it was actually about child rights and climate change. And we had Farzana with us. Farzana Farouk is a child activist from Bangladesh. And she repeated maybe 2 times. She said, nothing about us without us. And I truly sympathize with that. And I think wherever we are, we have to make sure that nothing about us without us. Whether you're a woman, even if you're a young man or a boy, you have to listen and then you can live. So I believe that if we recognize what a safe space is, particularly you were referring to medical assistance if needed when you're violated, abused, or you suffer from other kinds of domestic violence. A safe space can be a physical space, but can also be a space in your head. And I think that is where the strength is. I think Vivian was also speaking about connecting virtually. At times, that is what we can do. Because you can only relate to whatever you went through if you're able to tell that story. You can only cope with so many things that you're able to express yourself. So you can only move on from experiences if you share them. And that is the strength from within, and that is a safe space that we want for all girls, women too. It is beyond the physical environment. Another area that is of very big importance, and maybe we didn't speak about it much today, is that when you're on the move. So let's say you live in Ukraine or you live in Yemen or in one of the countries that is currently going through Afghanistan, through conflict or a humanitarian or a man-made natural disaster, climate change even, that you're on the move, you're even more vulnerable. So reach out, think through what we can do from where we sit to support. And then I think empowering girls themselves to influence their own lives. So I believe in if a girl gets the opportunity to develop herself in a way that she can make decisions that impact her own life, that would already be a very big step forward. So together we can transform, I know, the future of girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian and Anne-Maria, for your calls to action. Thank you, Ms. Holshaw, for your response. I will now pass it on to Alexia.
As a member of a family of new immigrants from the Eastern European country of Romania to the United States of America, and as a volunteer with an array of community organizations from local to global settings, I connected deeply with the call to end violence against girls and women that Vivian made, and the call to provide access to healthcare resources to women and girls, particularly in rural areas, that Anna Maria made. It is also important to hear about the in necessary work that international organizations do, such as the activities described by Ms. Camille Colshaw, the UNICEF Deputy Executive Director of Partnerships. Let's now move toward the closing remarks. Reflecting on these calls to action, we are reminded of the challenging situations in which many girls worldwide find themselves in on a daily basis. When we began today, we took a moment to honor those girls who were unable to be here with us. As we conclude, we would like to take a moment and share a story submitted by a girl in Afghanistan in 2014 and included in the Girls Speak Out 8 years ago. We stand in solidarity with the girls and the people of Afghanistan and all the girls around the world who are in situations of crisis. Here is a good girl in Afghanistan. I want to change the way people think about girls in my society. In Afghanistan, I've not been a good girl. I was supposed to wear a headscarf when I was 9, but I did not wear it until I was 13. In Afghanistan, a good girl is a good girl when she wears a big, long dress and a huge scarf, sits at home, doesn't talk much, and accepts what her family says. They tell her when something is good or bad for her. A good girl is one who doesn't ask for rights, doesn't ask for inheritance, serves her brothers and her bosses, cooks well, and doesn't have her own name, but is called by her brother's or her father's name. She always prays 5 times a day and reads the Quran instead of going to school. She doesn't choose her husband or her future and keeps her father proud by doing all these things. When she marries, she sacrifices herself. Age does not matter. Even if she is 12, she is now a woman. She lives in her husband's house with her mother-in-law and father-in-law, and she doesn't go to her father's house too much. She gives birth to a boy, not a girl, and quietly tolerates whatever is being done to her. We have a saying in Afghanistan: the good girl is the one who goes to her husband's house in a white dress and comes out in a white shroud. Whatever is done to her, she will tolerate it until she is dead. It seems impossible to bring change in my country, but I want to be part of the way we change issues regarding women. I cry when I think about the laws passed against women. But then I think, I'm a leader, and a leader needs to be strong. I think of Malala. I think of my mother's hero and my hero, Margaret Thatcher, and of Afghan human rights activist Sima Samad, and so many other strong women. This is how I stayed strong. When I see the situation of women in my country, I do not want to marry or have children. But then I think, maybe I will be a mother, so I can give my children the freedom to choose, to think, to be smart. I will treat them all equal. I will never let my boys be my girls' bosses. I will make them think of all people as human. Hazara and Tajik, Pashtun and Uzbek, Jewish and German, Muslim and Christian, black and white. I dream big, and I hope my dreams come true. I always tell myself, keep on dreaming, even if it breaks your heart. I hope everyone dreams. I ask you to remember all the important ideas and calls for action that girls have shown today and to bring girls' voices and dreams into your own work. I hope you are as inspired as I am in the course of these discussions about from around the world to increasing access to education for girls, upholding girls' right to survival and protection from violence, and engaging girls in communities as agents of change. As we come close to the end of our event today, consider the world girls are creating and the many contributions girls can make toward a more equitable future for our planet. We will now present the live illustration for reflection for all activities of our event created by graphic recording artist Sita Bedi. Thank you to artist Ipsita Vivendi for capturing today's discussion. As stated during the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1989, all children have rights and should be treated fairly. As specified in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action from 1995, the rights of the girl child are an inalienable, integral, and indivisible part of all human rights. The UN, all of its member states, and all organizations working within the UN have a duty to take all necessary measures to eliminate discrimination against the girl child and all obstacles to gender equality. Progress has been made in the past decade in this respect, yet there is still a need for additional work to empower girls and ensure all girls have access to education, safe environments, and opportunities to develop at their full potential. Now, on to Mackenzie.
Thank you. Today we have heard from girl advocates from around the world speaking to a variety of issues, including girls' access to education, issues related to gender-based violence, and girls' inclusion in decision-making. We would like to thank all of the girl activists for joining us today and for sharing their incredible stories. Looking back at the past 10 years of International Day of the Girl, Girls Speak Out has been able to connect girls from around the world to discuss issues that affect themselves and their communities, highlighting a core objective of International Day of the Girl. In bringing us together to re-examine the progress made towards the full realization of girls' rights, the International Day of the Girl reminds us all of the unity that is necessary to make further progress on gender equity and girls' rights. However, it is also necessary to recognize the urgent manner in which the issues discussed today need to be resolved. As our speakers demonstrated, even 10 years after the establishment of the International Day of the Girl, girls from around the world are still deeply affected by gaps in gender equity every day. We cannot continue to live in a world where girls are constantly deprioritized. We urge all of the policymakers present today to remember that the call from girls around the world is girls' rights now, not girls' rights tomorrow or in another 10 years. Now I will hand it over to the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Mission of Canada to the UN, Richard Arbeiter, for his closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Mackenzie. Thanks as well to Maria, to Monica, to Dimitra, to Alexia, to everyone who participated. Very, very briefly, you're right. It's absolutely right. Anne Maria, your question about, okay, fine, it's generational change. What do we do between now and then is absolutely the right question to be asked. Thank you for asking it. Thank you for leveraging your capacities and your acumen in each of your communities to try to respond to that question in each of your ways. I come from a country and a government that's embraced a feminist foreign policy, puts gender equality at the middle of everything, and that acknowledges that there are systemic and structural barriers that prevent the realization of the enjoyment of equal rights for women and girls, not just in Canada, but around the world. What does that actually mean? I think that referring to systems and systemic barriers cannot be an excuse to say, well, it's the system. Systems are made up of individuals who take decisions to behave in certain ways every day, and they are accountable for those decisions. And the elimination of those structural barriers equally relies on individuals to take different decisions to behave differently. And I think people take those decisions when they start, as we heard from many of you, by just listening. It's really not that hard. So let me say that I listened today and I heard, not for the first time and not for the last time, that the violence against Indigenous women and girls, not only in Canada but in other parts of the world, causes intergenerational trauma, and that it's real, and that it needs to continue to be addressed as meaningfully as possible for all of the individuals and their communities concerned. I also listened and heard that vulnerabilities persist in every country and every community around the world. I learned and I listened again that the commitments that have been made by policymakers over the last 10 years and previous remain unfulfilled. And that the needs are indeed urgent. I also believe that inclusion is not an endpoint, it's a mindset. And that inclusion starts with I. And so all I can say in answer to your question is I take that commitment very seriously, and whether it's in my own family, in my workplace, in the school that my son goes to, or schools in my community, or people that I interact with, it's on me. It's on all of us to behave differently, to listen, to learn, and to think a little bit differently, to actually start with, what do you think, before I tell you what I think. It's really important. So in that vein, and I know the situation in Iran was raised a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to commend to you Maraye, the protest song that some of you may already be aware of. This is a song that's a collection of tweets that people issued over the course of the protests that tried to explain why they were protesting. And I'm not going to quote the whole song, but it is so simple and therefore so meaningful. It talks about protesting because of yearning for a normal life, because of the embarrassment of an empty pocket, because of my sister, your sister, our sister, because of women, because of life, because of freedom. And it repeats freedom over and over and over again. There is no freedom without rights. There is no freedom without everyone feeling that they can enjoy their rights. We're all accidents of birth. I don't know anyone in this room who chose to be born when or where they were born. Not a single one of us. And so our enjoyment should not be based on geography. Our understanding of freedom needs to be based on rights, as you have all put it. So I will simply just end by adding my voice to girls' rights now, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. Thank you very much for putting this on and giving me a chance to speak as well. Thanks.
Thank you to Deputy Permanent Representative Richard Arbeiter for your important closing remarks. We would like to thank all attendees, in person and online, and the co-sponsors of the International Day of the Girl Child, the permanent missions to the United Nations from Canada, Peru, and Turkey, the UN Secretary General, UN Women, UNICEF, and the Working Group on Girls for your commitment to furthering girls' rights. Whether it is through the calls to action we heard from our girl activists today, or another form of advocacy, we urge you to continue championing this cause to reach the full realization of girls' rights. We cannot attain girls' rights now without the work and effort of every one of us.
Indeed, Dimitra. The issues we face as a society may seem disproportionately large and sometimes discouraging to see. But with patience, dedication, and collective and inclusive advocacy, we can create a better future. The girls present here today and across the globe are a crucial and indispensable part of that future. They have the right to create it on their own terms, and we hope today was another step towards attaining that. The experiences we have shared and the conversations we have had are an ongoing effort towards our goal of equality. And I wish you success in this work together and spreading the word to the world beyond.
Thank you, and we wish you all a very happy International Day of the Girl Child.